Are you looking to get ready, be prepared, and transform your financial future? Then you've come to the right place. This is the Get Ready Money podcast with Tony Stewart, where Tony has insightful conversations with financial experts who are changing the way we think about money. Catch up on the latest financial trends and hear practical advice from Tony and his expert guests so you can build healthy habits that work. Be empowered with tips for implementing small changes that can have a big impact on your financial future. So sit back and get ready to hear from today's guest.
Welcome to the Get Ready Money podcast, changing the way we think about money. I'm your host, Tony Stewart. When it comes to charitable giving, there's a powerful tool that often gets overlooked: donor-advised funds. Today, I'm joined by Alissa Maizes, Erinn Andrews, and Russell James, and we'll be exploring how donor-advised funds can help align your values, your legacy, and your wealth strategy. Alissa, Erinn, Russell, welcome to the Get Ready Money podcast. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Yeah, excited for this conversation. So start off, let's find out a little bit about you. Can each of you give a brief overview of your origin story and how you got connected with charitable giving? Alissa, you want to kick off?
I'd love to. So my name is Alissa, and I am the founder of Amplify My Wealth. I'm a financial advisor to women who have a household income of six figures or more, or net worth, or both, as well as young adults who are just starting out on their journey. And my experience, I would say, or how it all started with philanthropy was at home, because I have two parents who were always involved in giving back, whether it was their time, money, or both. And so I naturally did things when I was younger. And then as I got older, in my early 20s in law school, is the first memory I have of when I really did something on my own. And it turned from donating money and time to then leadership roles. And then it's excelled to raising millions of dollars with others. You can never do it on your own, for different non-for-profits. And at the end of 2024 is when I set up my first donor advised fund. So I'm really excited to have this conversation. Thanks for having us, Tony.
Yeah, glad you could be here. Erinn, you want to jump in next?
Sure, happy to. Hi, everyone. My name is Erinn Andrews. I'm the founder and CEO of GiveTeam. I started GiveTeam about 3 years ago. We do philanthropic advising to help individual donors come up with a charitable mission statement, a giving strategy, and then we connect them with local nonprofits to start funding. I've been working in this space my whole career post-graduate school, but I had no idea when I went into graduate school that I would end up along this journey and this path. I come to the charitable giving space really initially from academic inquiry and interest in problem solving. I had been working in selective college admissions, and as I was going to talks during graduate school, suddenly saw connections between how we evaluate applicants in a selective way and how we evaluate nonprofits, where we can't really have an apples to apples comparison because each is really unique in their own way. So my entry to the charitable giving space was really one of academic interest and curiosity. And I ended up starting an organization to identify high impact nonprofits. I ran GuideStar's nonprofit strategy, restructured their database to develop the bronze, silver, gold, and platinum levels of distinction. I ran a research lab at Stanford to understand donor behavior and trained financial advisors. And then my journey has taken me to GiveTeam now, where I really like to think about what problems are out there and how we can help people come together and solve them through their generosity.
Fantastic. Russell.
So I started out as an estate planning attorney in practice for a number of years. And at the same time, I also was running planned giving for a small residential college. And it was through that connection. I would always teach at least one class a semester and sort of decided the whole college professor thing was what I wanted to do. I went back and got my PhD. My dissertation was on charitable giving. And along the way, the college also asked me to serve as president, which I did for about 5.5 years, mostly a major gifts fundraising focused role. And when that job ended, my career goal was to not be anyone's boss, to just do teaching and research in the classroom. And that's what I've done ever since for a number of years at University of Georgia. And now I've been at Texas Tech University in the School of Financial Planning for 15 years. And I teach charitable financial planning for graduate courses on two of them on the law and tax aspects and two of them on donor decision making for either major gifts or planned gifts. So I've had the opportunity to be on sort of all different sides of the table, whether managing fundraisers, being a fundraiser, advising clients, and also just as a researcher. And so that is my exposure. And so that is why I'm interested in these things, really focusing on how to encourage generosity.
Yeah, well, that's fantastic. Well, I appreciate all of you being here today. For those watching and listening, you may know as I have a background a little bit on all sides of the table, as do our guests, and that it's so important to recognize as advisors that our clients are thinking about philanthropy. And if we're not having those conversations with them, someone else is. So, it's helpful for us to be able to understand perhaps for ourselves so we can start to help with others. My first question is, why is it important to align your giving strategy with your personal values and wealth building goals? Whoever wants to jump in?
I'm happy to jump in. I feel like this
All
is what I
right.
spend my life's work talking about. So why is it important to align those goals? I think in general, it's good to do things on purpose, and with intention, right? Sometimes we do things just on a whim, but in most of our lives, we're making very purposeful decisions about the schools we send our kids to, what we purchase, what we eat, where we go. There are lots of things that we're doing on purpose, and I don't think charitable giving should be any different. However, I do recognize that charitable giving involves both head and heart in terms of decision making and personal relationships, and I don't mean to divorce those two from one another. I think it's complicated, but in the same way that a financial planner would work with their client to say, what are your hopes and dreams? Where do you want to end up? What are you hoping to achieve? What change are you hoping to make in the world? And how can we help you get there financially? Absolutely, charitable giving is part of that conversation. And you're already aligning your values and priorities with that financial future. You should, of course, also align those charitable priorities with your personal priorities to just keep everything in alignment and to know that you have a plan that you've created on purpose. You're in the driver's seat to make whatever type of change you hope to see in the world.
And I'll jump in and say that what we know from research is that once a person gets to kind of that median level of income, that further increases actually don't have any relationship to life satisfaction. And so at a certain point, when we've taken care of our consumption needs, then the questions become more about impact. And when we're talking about impact, if that ever moves beyond just my immediate family, well, we're often talking about philanthropy. And I think that's where we can be helpful in showing people the best ways to make an impact, to do something that is personally meaningful for them as they look at their money, their wealth building, and what kind of a difference they ultimately want to make.
I love that. I also, to build upon what both of you said, I think it's so important also to align it with your values because by having a plan, as opposed to, as you had mentioned, doing it without intention, it's more likely that you're not going to have regrets because I feel there's so many great causes to give. But I think when you figure out what you value most, you can actually figure out what aligns with your values. When people are not sure where to give, I love charitynavigator.org as a resource. Because you can look up and see the transparency of different organizations and find different ways to give, especially when there's some cause that's new, and everyone's asking for money and you're not sure where to go. It's a great place to start, at least, and then you could dig a little deeper. And so I think that's a great place to start. And then once you figure out how much you can afford to give. So if you can't afford to give now, maybe it's in your estate plan, maybe it's through your employer with a match, maybe it's your time, maybe it's promoting an organization and doing a fundraiser on social media. There's so many ways to give back. But it's important to also make sure there's a good return on investment. So that's why I like Charity Navigator as one of the sources, because with any money or time that you spend, you should feel good about it. If someone asks you a question, you should feel confident that you know enough about it and that it's something that if you were to put your money or time into, that you don't have regrets or you find out later that the money is not really going where you want it to go. So those are just a few of the reasons why I like aligning it with your values and making it part of your greater financial plan.
Yeah, Alyssa, and I think you said something there that's really important is that as a donor, you should do your research on a nonprofit that you give to. I mean, we probably don't want to get into a conversation here about overhead versus program and everything like that, but that, it's important that the nonprofit is delivering services that you feel are important. And that, there are tools like Erinn with GuideStar, uh, that can assist you with that. So, let's go into this, the whole reason we're here for this conversation, donor advised funds, and talk about what they are and how they can help people. Who wants to take the first shot at what is a donor advised fund?
So I'll jump in and say that in simple terms, the idea is you have an account. You can put assets or cash into the account. You receive a charitable tax deduction when you put it into the account. You can manage that and it can grow, and you can decide at whatever point that you want to push that out to various charitable projects, organizations as you want to do that. Now, what are the benefits? The technical benefits are that we can do our tax planning without having to align immediately with our charitable impact. So, for example, I may find on December 15th that I really need to transfer some appreciated assets in to hit my goals and tax planning, but that doesn't mean I should be scampering around for exactly where those funds should be transferred charitably. And so it gives me that freedom where I can make that transfer in and then decide later exactly where those things are going to go. Now, I would argue that the chief benefits of using a donor advised fund are actually psychological. That is, it makes giving more fun. Why does it do that? Well, because it makes giving less painful at each step. So, for example, let's say I transfer some shares of stock or even some cash into a donor advised fund. Well, that's not too uncomfortable because it's still in sort of my fund, right? I still get to see it. I can manage the assets in it in many cases, and I can see it grow. And I know ultimately I get to recommend where that money is going to go to. So that's not quite so painful. But then sometime later, when I decide to make a gift, something that really moves my heart or is a great opportunity, well, at that point, that's not uncomfortable because we're just changing the timing of when that charitable gift is going to be made. It's already committed to charity, and it actually ends up benefiting the charities for a couple of reasons. One of which is that gifts out of donor advised funds and private family foundations tend to be counter cyclical, meaning that when there's an economic crisis, people will respond by pushing more money out of those funds because why? Well, I can't use it anyway because it's already been committed to charity. Whereas if I'm writing a check out of my personal checking account, the stock market crashes, my personal economic circumstances become negative, I'm not going to write that check. But if I've already got the money in the donor advised fund and I see that there's a much greater need, much more willing to push that money out. So those are a few thoughts about how it can be more fun to use a donor advised fund.
I see this all the time too, Russell. I just want to underscore one of the main points of the benefits of having a donor advised fund, that they are somewhat insulated from the ups and downs of the economic whatever's happening in our world. And people who have money in a donor advised fund, as you say, mentally, it is technically not theirs anymore, even though it is theirs to direct, but it's not like they can bring it back in and go purchase something else with those dollars. It is earmarked. You've turned it over for charitable purposes, and now you have the joyful opportunity to figure out how you would like to see that impact enacted in your society. So I also love that about donor advised funds. The other thing I was going to say is what I use my donor advised fund for is tracking. I just love having everything all in one place. So when did I make that gift? Oh, it was May of last year. Okay, then I should give again this year. Or I also try to give outside of the December timeframe in general, once the money's in the DAF, because so many organizations receive donations in the year end, and that can make sort of figuring out their own budgeting throughout the year kind of challenging. And what's nice about the donor advised fund is you can have a February to February cycle. It can be really whatever you want. You don't need to sort of respond to the solicitations that might come around. So I think there are lots of benefits as well. Another way to look at it is some people, I would say the other options would be either cash or a DAF, or a DAF or a private foundation. And for me, the way I think about it is, if you truly are giving just cash, it's not additionally tax advantaged to put your money into a donor advised fund, but there are administrative benefits of having everything all in one place, and with the opportunity for those dollars to grow over time if you're still making a decision about where you want the money to go. But compared to a private foundation, comparing that to a DAF, there are quite a few benefits to having a DAF over a private foundation, if that's something that you're considering. And we could go into that more if you want, Tony, but just to highlight that there are a lot of nuances as to the different benefits that DAFs can really offer.
So just to add to that, I love the fun aspect. I think that's great. It definitely makes it easier for me. My considerations that I went through, since I did it recently, I figure I'll share that, is one is, my philanthropic interest. So I knew I had the interest. And I did speak to my accountant to run the numbers to see. I did have an appreciated mutual fund that I would have to pay a lot of taxes on, and it wasn't a great mutual fund to have in my brokerage account. So I was generating a lot of taxes with that mutual fund. So he ran the numbers and it made sense. I mean, it made financial sense, besides the fact that it made sense to my heart to be able to do it. And so I was going to save money ultimately. And I was also going to be able to, like you said, have fun with giving. Now it's in one place. And whenever I feel like doing it, like you said, it's not mine. So I had that advantage too. The other thing that I considered when picking it was, I found a donor advised fund where they actually supported causes themselves that aligned with what I support. So I like that too, that they take some of the money they make and they give it back to things that I care about. So for me, that was important. And also the cost of investing, because to me, that's really important. And I think it's something that some people overlook. They just see the tax advantage and the donor advised fund. Of course, not the people here, but sometimes people, it's overwhelming. There's a lot to know. But it's also important to look at the costs. Like, you want this money to grow, and how much of it is staying there that you'll be able to give philanthropically. And then the final thing for me that was a game changer was, I knew that if I were to pass, I wanted my kids to be able to both have their names on it. And not every place makes it easy to do that. So it's really important for me. I wanted to pass on the legacy. My kids know how I feel about giving back. And like in my head, I'm like, if I'm not here, it would just bring me joy to think that my two children, who are 21 and 23, who know how we feel about this, will then be able to continue this together. So those are some of the things that I thought of that I just wanted to share, because I think if those are things that are important to you, definitely have a little checklist and make sure that wherever you do it, it aligns with those values too.
Alyssa, just to go a little bit deeper on that is, so if you pass away, do your kids inherit the DAF and are they then able to continue the donations?
So where I did it, the way it works is it will go to that, it'll maintain the same name that I named it, and then they will be the owner. I don't know the
The
legal
donor advisors,
for it, but
Okay.
the don't, right.
donor advisors.
They'll be able to do the recommend the grants when I pass away. Another option is you could put them on the account with you, but I didn't want to do that. My feeling is they didn't earn the money and it's my money and they could do their own. It doesn't mean I would not include them in making decisions with it, but I didn't want them to be able to log in at this point and just do it on their own. But I did want to pass on. That being said, there are, different places I looked into and they don't make it as easy to do it. Sometimes there's like little tricks. So if you get in touch with one place like Fidelity, they said I couldn't do what I wanted to do. But then I spoke to someone, that's not where I ended up going, but I did speak to someone and they said if I create a separate fund, didn't put money in it, and put my children's name in it. And then I selected upon my death, the donor advised money would go to that account. I could do it that way. So there are, it's like everything, you sort of have to do your due diligence. And if you're determined to do something, then you can figure it out. Usually there's someone who knows the answer.
That's awesome. Well, I think, I think it's a good way to encourage your kids to continue a legacy of giving as part of your estate planning. And I think that's an important value that you can teach with your kids. Erinn, I wanted to walk back and take you up on your offer of, comparing a donor advised fund to a private foundation, because I think that's probably in front of most people's minds, especially because they're more familiar, or a lot of people may be familiar with the term private foundation. And then as part of that, Erinn, can you go into a little bit about like, are these just for rich people or can anybody do this?
Yeah, great. Thank you. So donor advised funds are not new, but they've really increased in popularity in the last 15 or so years. Some could say 20, but I really see the sort of hockey stick growth happening in the last 15 years or so, 10 to 15. Before that, really, donors were giving either just cash, credit card, check, or they were so wealthy that they might have set up a private foundation. And with a private foundation, there are obviously tax benefits to doing so. You can pay for a lot of the services to run that. There are, of course, governance issues. There are legal requirements. There are even payout minimum requirements from the corpus that has been set up for that private foundation. There's public filing of reports to share where those grant dollars went, all of that type of thing. And traditionally, that really has been the main vehicle that some of the wealthier folks might choose as a way to continue and maintain a family legacy, involve children, grandchildren, et cetera, and have an impact and a way to give back. But donor advised funds have really rocked that world and really ended up providing individuals with an alternative that in a lot of ways can act like a private foundation without some of the administrative costs and other paperwork that goes along with that. So some examples, I don't know I won't quote on the exact percentages, but a DAF can often be more tax advantaged than putting money into a private foundation. There's actually no minimum payout requirement from a donor advised fund. Russell spoke to that. Money goes in, that's when the taxable event happens, and then donors can decide where they want the money to go. From a donor advised fund, you can choose to give anonymously. Most folks don't, which is great because we want nonprofits to be able to engage with people who are giving to them. But for those for whom that's really important, there is that option for anonymous giving. There are usually much lower management fees associated with donor advised funds compared to private foundations. You don't have to pay the lawyers, you don't have to have the board meeting or the minutes or the governance structures. So in general, it's usually a lot more inexpensive and streamlined from an administrative standpoint to be giving from a donor advised fund. And then you still can set up legacy planning. Who should receive the funds when I pass? Not an individual, but a donor advisor to decide where those dollars might go. So you can involve multiple generations. I see families getting really creative and setting up multiple DAFs for their kids, giving them some autonomy and ability to do grant making. So, and you can name it whatever you want. You can call it your blah, blah, blah family foundation. So you can really, in a lot of ways, act like it's a private foundation, but it just has got this different structure. And what has happened over the years, there are more than 1,000 donor advised fund sponsors out there. There are so many. So as Alissa was saying, like, you definitely can shop around and find one that's the right fit for you. Is it a community foundation? Is it a national commercial DAF sponsor? Is it a faith-based? Is it tied to your alma mater? There are so many different options out there. But when looking for those charities, you they've really, in the beginning, it was more expensive to open up a donor advised fund. You would have to have a larger corpus going in. You might have minimum grant requirements or minimum balances. But so many donor advised fund sponsors today have lowered those minimums. Sometimes you can open up an account with $0. You can sometimes have a zero balance in that account without it, having to be closed. And the amount that the donation can be made has also been lowered significantly. And so what that's meant over these last 10 or so years is so many more people are opening up donor advised funds because it's more democratized. It's easier to set up an account. It's easier to show up in that way. And so the account balances actually are the median balances are getting lower and lower as more people use this. So it means you don't have to be uber wealthy in order to have a donor advised fund. You can have a charitable giving vehicle and have really purposeful giving, but not have to have at least $10 million to set up a private foundation. You can show up with $50,000 or $10,000 or whatever the right amount is for you. So I'll stop there, but there's, I'm sure, more I could say.
That's awesome. So, one of the things that I'm thinking about, and most of my work has been with smaller nonprofits, at least as a board member, is this something that smaller nonprofits can tap into with their donor base is DAFs?
Yeah, sure. So I think all charities it's not an unusual experience to be named as a beneficiary. And especially with, we see this in particular, if you have donors who are making gifts of assets rather than cash. And that's really key to keep in mind, because for anyone at any level, if you give appreciated assets rather than cash, you actually get a double tax benefit. Because if you've held it for more than a year, you still get a tax deduction of the same size if you can use those things. But even if you can't use those things, you've actually avoided paying the capital gains tax on the sale. And in fact, if you have some shares of stock that have gone up in value, you don't even have to change your portfolio. Instead of giving the cash, you just give the old shares to the charity, or ideally give it to the DAF, and you use the cash to buy brand new shares of the same company. You can do it in the same day. It's not lost property, so we don't have any waiting periods. So it is smarter to give appreciated assets, and DAFs make that so much easier. If you try to work with a local nonprofit and say, hey, I've got these shares of stock, I'd like to transfer them to you, you're going to get a deer in the headlights with the medallioning requirements and all this stuff you have to go through. So you just sidestep all that. You use a DAF, and then it's easy to transfer. The DAF sells it, turns it into cash, and then ships the money out to the charity. So that's when those things can be handy, especially for small organizations. One of the things I always tell small organizations is that if you have someone who wants to give you something valuable, we're not talking about timeshares here, I mean something valuable, the answer is never no. The answer may just be, absolutely, we would love that gift. We just need to run it through a donor advised fund. Let me help you walk through that process, because there are donor advised funds that are literally set up to take any kind of valuable asset, whether it's anything from unharvested crops to a partial interest in a racehorse, to real estate. I mean, there's a DAF for that. So that makes it much more convenient.
The other thing I would add is there's a widget that nonprofits can put on their website on that donate page called Chariot, where they can integrate, like people can log into their DAF directly from that website if they want to make a gift. So it's really trying to enable DAF giving directly to these organizations in a more seamless way. And this is great for small nonprofits, right? They should absolutely talk to their development directors about donor advised funds, help them understand what the donor looks like when they come to them through that route, how to support them, thank them, solicit them, engage with them in those ways. So I just wanted to mention Chariot as well, because that's a new.
Yeah, I love that. I'm going to look into that. I've never heard that before. And also, I mean, myself, prior to setting up the donor advised fund, I would contribute. Sometimes I would use different means. I'd use cash or a charge card, depending on the situation. But I did use appreciated assets. And the other negative side of doing that, especially when the market is the way it is, you don't really know how much you're donating. So if there's a certain amount, it's one thing if you have a share of a stock and you know that that's what you want to donate and you're going to do it no matter what the value is when they get it. If you say you pledge to give $1,000 and you're trying to figure out, well, how much of my mutual fund do I have to give? When they actually get it and cash it, if you're going to give it to them as opposed to your donor advised fund, which you can say a dollar amount. I want to give $1,000 and they'll give it to the organization as a grant. When you're contributing to an organization as shares of stock, but you want to donate $1,000, it might be worth a lot more or a lot less. And if you've already pledged it, you can't undo it. So you give it to them, and that's just one more thing that makes it a lot easier with the DAF. And I'm sure, the other aspect is sometimes, this is why it's important to speak to an accountant about it, I feel, is sometimes you think because you're contributing to a charitable organization and it's a lot of money, whatever you feel is your meaningful gift as a lot to you, it doesn't mean that you can write it off on your taxes. So when you do a DAF, usually you'd have that conversation with your accountant and find out how much would be necessary so you could have that tax advantage instead of just leaving it to chance. So I think that's another aspect of it too to consider.
And Tony, let me just jump in and say that that's a great point, because one of the best uses of a DAF is this idea that now that we have higher levels for the standard deduction, fewer people can use deductions. If you've got some financial flexibility, you just pick a target year, you stuff the next, say, 5 years worth of giving into the DAF right now in the target year. That allows you to have 1 year of really high deduction so you can actually get past a standard deduction, itemize those deductions, and then over the next 5 years, you're pushing those gifts out as you would normally give them, but you're able to take advantage of them because you are accumulating all of those gifts from a tax perspective into 1 year by using a DAF.
And
That's
then
an excellent, oh, sorry.
I just want to add, I'm geeking out over this. Sorry, Professor. But the other thing is you still get to invest the money, but you're not paying taxes on it while it's growing. So I put the money in the DAF at the end of 2024, and I'm still investing the money while it's sitting there. I didn't contribute I didn't grant all the money yet. So you can still invest the money where if you're keeping it in your brokerage account, you're paying taxes each year while you're letting it grow. So I think just another thing to think about if you're going to do it anyway. If you do it sooner, you still get to invest and have your money grow. It's not like you put it there and now it's just sitting there waiting for you to give gifts.
That's awesome. And I think this is all really valuable. So if you're the executive director or a board member for a small nonprofit, this is something where you can really get out and talk to your donor base about. And you'd be surprised at how many people have already set up DAFs. And it's an easy way for you to accept gifts where you don't have to go through the process as you've all talked about like, okay, is this a good gift? Is this a bad gift? We don't have a whole gift acceptance procedure that larger nonprofits have. So it's an easy way for smaller nonprofits to accept these gifts and to have them, I guess, vetted by another party. Is that the best way to say that? So, um,
Yeah, the nonprofit just gets the cash, so there's no liability or risk on their side.
yeah, because that's something I've seen in working with nonprofits on development committees and with gift acceptance policies is that's a problem for small nonprofits. Like, okay, you have to have somebody value the gift. You have to have somebody praise it. The whole well, that's the same thing, praising and valuation, but we'll ignore that for a minute. But is you do have to go through a wide thing. You have to be able to determine, is this a good gift for the nonprofit or not? And Alissa, I think that goes directly to what something you were saying is sometimes in the mind of a donor, they're giving something, or Erinn, you might have said it, they're giving something that they think is a tremendous gift. But on the nonprofit side, it's really not a great gift. And this is a way, I think, from what all of you have said, if I'm understanding correctly, to sort of equalize that and make sure that it is a good gift for the nonprofit.
Right. Cash is always good. I mean, and it's much better when it's in the non-for-profit's discretion on how they spend it, because sometimes we have a great idea of something that we want to fund because it means a lot to us. And I'm not personally, I think you should do what you want to do with your money, but I would ask that people consider if that's something that the non-for-profit really needs, because often if everyone is selecting something that's special to them, they could run into issues and challenges with that, where sometimes giving them the discretion could really make a difference. That being said, if there's something that's important to you and that's going to be what moves you to give, then let them know and find the right non-for-profit that's going to make the most of your contribution and really do what you want to do and make the impact that's important to you.
Agree. We advise donors in similar ways. That's great.
Yeah. So, to start to wrap up is, we're going to go into what I call the Get Ready Hot Take Trio, which are quick takes from each of you with 3 questions to help everybody change the way they think about money and giving. The first question is, and whoever wants to jump in, please feel free. What myth are you trying to break about charitable giving or donor advised funds?
So I would say the myth that I'm trying to break is that there's anyone who's listening to this that can't give back to a charity they care about. Whether you have the money or not, you can do something. So whether it's a donor advised fund or maybe that's not for you, but you want to give money, maybe it could be in your estate plan, maybe it could be your time, your expertise, but everyone is able to give philanthropically. It's just finding what matches your financial plan and what you can afford to do and feel comfortable about it. That's really important. And then something that aligns with your values, as we discussed. And then ultimately finding the thing that works for you. So I think especially for younger people who are just starting out on their financial journey, if they're doing their estate plan, I think that's a great place to put something to give to organizations, especially in my case, when my kids were babies. We did that because we wanted our kids to know that if something did happen to us, that we had that message, that they knew what was important to us. It wasn't going to be an amount that was going to leave our kids destitute or wishing that we had thought about not doing that. But I think when you're doing an estate plan, even if it's a small demonstrative gift, it can really make an impact to your legacy and to the organization. So I think that's one way of giving. And like I said, your time, your expertise, whatever works for you, make sure you're comfortable and just do it.
Great advice. Russell.
So I'd just jump in and say very simply, if you make giving more fun, people will do more of it. Now, that may seem like a blatantly obvious sort of statement, but so many nonprofits and nonprofit leaders are afraid or antagonistic towards donor-advised funds. No, donors shouldn't be allowed to do this. They should give it to us directly. And look, if you make giving more fun, people will do more of it. And just listening to Alissa and how much fun she's had with her donor advised fund and others that I've worked with at all levels of giving, I would just encourage folks to take a second look. This is something that has worked for generations among the wealthy. Now, the new thing is we're sort of democratizing the ability to have fun with your giving this way. And and that kind of giving has really spiked. So I would say to take a second look and see that there are benefits of giving donors the options to do these things in ways that are more enjoyable. And the main benefit is if they have more fun, they do it more.
I love that. I would say the myth that I'm trying to debunk, especially around donor advised funds, is that the myth of people hoarding their assets in donor advised funds. And I think there's a lot of negative press there. I've heard negative press around donor advised funds and this critique that there's no minimum payout requirement, whereas there is for private foundations. The reality is, on average, donor advised funds give out 4 or 5 times more than private foundations annually. Now, is that every donor? No. Do I wish donors would make decisions and grant recommendations sooner than later? Yes, I do. But I think we need to really think what the actual problem is we're trying to solve for. And I don't think necessarily just providing a minimum grant distribution per year isn't the right solution. Instead, I would like to empower advisors, friends in donors' world to say, you have this money here. Where is it going to go? I want them to help take that next step, make it fun, get the money back out the door, back into communities doing the great work. That's what I wish we could do more of.
Love it. Love it. So, to wrap up, the last question is, what is your number one tip to help people rethink the role of philanthropy in their lives? Erinn, you want to start off with that one?
Sure. I think one thing that can stall out folks is just overthinking. And there's so much good happening in the world. There's so many great organizations. I say it's always better to do something than to do nothing. So I really encourage folks to maybe this year go out and meet one new organization that you've never engaged with before that aligns with your values and the things you care about. Go to an event, talk to the people there, understand how they're supporting their community, and make a gift. Just go for it. You've got the money in the DAF already. You might as well just do it and maybe add one extra zero more than you thought you were going to.
That's awesome. Russell.
So I would say that for most people, even throughout their entire lives, they will think of charitable giving only as a disposable income decision. And I would encourage folks to consider the idea not just of income sharing, but of wealth sharing, of considering giving from assets. And if you say, oh, well, I don't know, I might need that someday. Okay, well, then let's start out with part of your estate plan and what charitable component do you want to have there? But as time goes along, consider your wealth, consider your stock portfolio, consider your real estate and other holdings, and begin to think about, well, could I have a more enjoyable life by seeing the impact of that wealth sharing while I'm still alive, rather than just leaving it as an estate gift? And I think for many people, that's something to consider, to move beyond just the disposable income decision, to think about how every once in a while you might also engage in some wealth sharing or asset sharing.
I love it. Alissa.
So I think it's really important that people certainly consider the return on investment and whether they can afford it and what aligns with their values. But the other thing to think about is return on investment isn't just about the finances. It's also about the joy that you get. It's, like I shared, the importance of passing on a legacy, letting your children and your family know what's important to you to pass on those values to them, but to also just think about ways that you might, fulfill things in your life that you're not even aware of, whether it's, go to the charitable organization, right? And volunteer. I think that's a great way to start. When my kids were little, I was all about having them be involved, going to the food pantry, serving people food, stuffing the bags, handing the bags out. Start there. Find an organization that's hands-on if you're not ready to give, and get involved and see, is this something that aligns with my values? Is this something I could see giving money to when I feel comfortable giving money? And if it's not, it doesn't mean you shouldn't do it, but maybe you try something else. Get involved, do something, because I know for me, it just brings me so much joy. And I don't think you know until you're doing it, until you find the right place, whether it's writing a check or recommending a grant or giving your time. It can really fulfill aspects of your life and needs and wants that you don't even realize are there. And you also get to meet like-minded people. So the way I see it is, when you're doing something for a non-for-profit, even if maybe you don't meet your best friend there that first day, you feel good when you walk away. I mean, you don't look and say, oh, the movie was bad or something. I don't believe I spent 2 hours. At the end of the day, you know you're doing something good and tend to meet people like-minded like yourself. And I think that's a great way to spend your life too, is to meet like-minded people. So consider doing something and doing it now, because it will make a difference in your life.
That's awesome. That's a great place to wrap up. So to wrap up, where can everyone learn more about you and connect with each of you? Alissa, where can people find out more about you?
So you could definitely find me on Instagram at Amplify My Wealth, as well as my name, Alissa Maizes, on LinkedIn, or my website, Amplify My Wealth. And I want to thank you, Tony, for having me as a guest. And it's been great having this conversation also, Erinn and Russell. So I really appreciate it. And I would love to continue this conversation with anyone on any of those platforms, because I think it's really important that we continue this conversation. This shouldn't be secretive, just like finances shouldn't. If we talk about it more, more people will give, and more people will also get the joy from it too.
Yeah, well, thanks, Alyssa. And I think for everybody watching and listening, just to underscore what Alyssa said, there's so many ways that you can help support your favorite nonprofits, that it's not always about treasure, it's also about time and talent. I think, isn't that it? The three T's for philanthropy: time, treasure, and talent. Russell, where can people learn more about you?
Sure. So encouragegenerosity.com. All my books are there for free. My videos are there for free. Even law review articles and other things that people don't want to read, those are also there for free. Or you can connect with me on LinkedIn, and I will send you links to everything I've ever done.
Awesome. Awesome. And Erinn, how about you?
Yeah, thank you. So check out my work on my website at thegiveteam.com. I'm also very active on LinkedIn, so look me up there. And I can be reached on email, Erinn, ERINN, at thegiveteam.com. But would love to continue the conversation. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, fantastic. And for everybody watching and listening, as always, there will be links to everyone's social media profiles and websites, so you can check out all the resources and connect with all three of our guests. So, Alissa, Erinn, and Russell, thanks for joining us today on the Get Ready Money podcast.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Tony.
Yeah.
Take care.
Yeah. And thank you, everyone, as always, for tuning into this episode of the Get Ready Money podcast. If this episode helped change the way you think about charitable giving, please be sure to subscribe, share a friend, and leave a review. Until next time, let's change the way we think about money.